My beloved child, come sit with me for a moment before the noise of comparison gets loud again in your mind. I know what you have been quietly telling yourself, that you are late, that you are behind, that everyone around you seems to be reaching milestones you are still waiting for. The career, the marriage, the family, the healing, the breakthrough. You watch the timeline of your life against the timeline of others, and you feel a familiar ache settle in your chest. My beloved child, I want to tell you something plainly before we go any further. You are not behind schedule. You are exactly on the schedule I designed for you, and no other schedule was ever meant to be yours. I know this is hard to believe when the evidence around you seems to say otherwise. You see the wedding announcement, you see the promotion, you see the family photo, the paid-off house, the healed relationship, the dream finally realized, and each one lands like a small verdict against your own life. Another reminder of how far behind you believe you have fallen. But my beloved child, comparison always lies to you in the same way. It shows you someone else's finished chapter and holds it up next to your unfinished one, and then it calls that a fair comparison. It is not fair, because you are not living someone else's story. You are living yours, and yours has its own timing. I did not create every life to move at the same pace. Some trees grow tall within a few short years. Others take decades to reach their full height. And yet both are exactly as they should be when the season for their growth is understood correctly. No one stands in front of a slow-growing tree and calls it a failure for not matching the pace of the one beside it. My beloved child, I have never measured your worth by how quickly you reached a milestone. I have only ever measured you by the life I am forming in you, at the pace that life actually requires to be strong. I want you to notice something about the way comparison operates. It never compares you to the full truth of someone else's life. It compares you to a curated moment, a single visible achievement, without showing you the years of struggle behind it, the private battles, the false starts, the seasons that person also spent waiting and wondering if their time would ever come. You are comparing your entire hidden story to someone else's highlight reel, and no comparison built that way could ever be honest. My beloved child, release the comparison. It was never measuring what you thought it was measuring. There were people in the old stories who waited far longer than felt reasonable for what I had promised them. A husband and wife waited long past the years when childbearing seemed possible, watching others become parents around them for decades, before the promise I made to them finally came to pass. I did not forget them during those years. I was not being slow out of carelessness. I was preparing something that could only be born at the right time, in the right way, for reasons they could not fully see until it happened. My beloved child, if I asked faithful ones before you to trust a longer timeline than they expected, I am not asking anything different of you now. I want to correct a belief that has been quietly shaping how you see yourself. You have started to believe that being behind means being unfavored, that the ones who reach the milestone first are somehow more loved, more capable, more chosen than you. My beloved child, this is not true, and I want you to release it today. Timing does not equal favor. Some of what I am building in you requires more time precisely because it is being built more thoroughly, not because you are loved less than someone whose path looked quicker from the outside. So today, let me begin untangling the comparison that has convinced you your life is running late. Your life is not late. It is unfolding at this pace I designed for the specific purpose I have for you, and that purpose was never going to look identical to anyone else's. Bring me the ache of watching others move ahead of you, and let me remind you that I am not comparing you to them either. I am only ever working with you, on your own timeline, toward what I have always intended for your life. My beloved child, I have shown you that comparison never tells you the truth. And now I want to speak more directly to the thief that comparison actually is, because it does not simply misinform you, it steals something valuable from you every time you indulge it. It steals your peace in the present moment, replacing contentment with a low, constant hum of inadequacy. It steals your ability to celebrate what I am actually doing in your life right now, because your attention is fixed on what someone else has that you do not yet have. It steals your gratitude, turning blessings you do have into disappointment simply because they do not match someone else's version of success. I want you to notice how comparison operates quietly, almost without your permission. You open a screen meant for connection and leave feeling worse than when you opened it, without fully understanding why. It is because comparison rarely announces itself directly. It slips in beside admiration, beside encouragement, beside simple updates about someone else's life. And by the time you notice its presence, it has already planted the seed that your own life is somehow insufficient by comparison. My beloved child, I want you to become aware of this pattern so you can resist it before it takes root again. Comparison also distorts your understanding of my goodness. When you compare your unmet longing to someone else's fulfilled one, you begin to quietly wonder whether I am withholding good things from you that I have freely given to others. This is one of comparison's most damaging effects, because it does not simply make you feel behind, it makes you question my character. My beloved child, I want you to separate these two things clearly. My goodness toward you is not measured by whether your timeline matches someone else's. I am equally good to the one who receives the promise early and the one who receives it later, because my goodness was never dependent on timing in the first place. I also want to speak to the resentment that sometimes grows quietly out of comparison, even toward people you genuinely love. You may find yourself feeling a flicker of bitterness toward a friend's good news, even while you are truly happy for them, and then feeling ashamed of that flicker. My beloved child, I do not condemn you for this. It is a common wound, and I am gentle with you in it. But I want to free you from it, because bitterness towards someone else's blessing will not bring your own blessing any closer. It will only poison the relationships I want to keep whole in your life. There is a story of workers who were hired at different hours of the day, some in the early morning, some just before evening, and yet at the end of the day, all of them received the same generous wage. Those who worked longest resented those who worked less and received the same reward. And I asked them plainly whether they were begrudging generosity simply because it was given to someone else on a different timeline than their own. My beloved child, I want to ask you the same question gently today. Are you allowing someone else's blessing given on their own timeline to rob you of gratitude for what I am doing on yours? So my beloved child, let me take back what comparison has stolen from you, your peace, your gratitude, your trust in my goodness, your joy for the people around you. None of it needs to remain in comparison's hands. I am restoring your ability to look at your own life honestly, without holding it up against anyone else's, and to find it good, even in its unfinished state, because it is being built by me, for you, exactly as it should be. My beloved child, I have shown you what comparison steals, and now I want to speak to something you have quietly grieved. The sense that different seasons in your life are somehow a sign of failure. You look at the season you are currently in, the waiting, the starting over, the still figuring it out, and you interpret it as evidence that something has gone wrong, that you have fallen off the intended path. But my beloved child, seasons are not verdicts. A field lying fallow is not a failed field. A tree without leaves in winter is not a dead tree. Every season serves a purpose, even the ones that do not look like growth on the surface. I want you to consider how differently a farmer thinks about the seasons compared to how you have been thinking about your own life. A farmer does not panic in winter, wondering why nothing is growing, assuming the ground has failed. The farmer understands that winter is doing quiet, necessary work beneath the surface, work that summer could never accomplish. My beloved child, if you are in what feels like a winter season right now, a season without visible fruit, without obvious progress, I am not asking you to interpret it as failure. I am asking you to trust that I understand exactly what this season is accomplishing, even when it looks like nothing at all. There is wisdom in the old writings that says there is a time for everything under heaven, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to build and a time to tear down, a time to keep and a time to let go. My beloved child, this means your current season, whatever it looks like, has its own proper time and its own proper purpose. You are not required to be in harvest season simply because someone else is. You are not failing by being in a season of tearing down when someone else appears to be in a season of building. Every season has its place in the larger story I am writing through your life. I know it is difficult to trust a season you do not understand, especially when it stretches on longer than you expected. But my beloved child, some of what I am building in this current season could not be built in any other season. The patience you are developing right now, the character being formed, the dependence on me being deepened. These things grow specifically in the seasons that feel unproductive, not in the seasons that look impressive from the outside. I am not wasting this season. I am using it precisely because of what it alone can produce in you. I also want to address the shame you may carry about being in a season that looks different from your peers. Perhaps you are single while friends are marrying. Perhaps you are starting over in your career while others are being promoted. Perhaps you are still healing while others appear to have already moved on. My beloved child, different seasons occurring at different times among different people were never a sign that something has gone wrong with you specifically. They are simply evidence that no two lives are following identical timelines, because no two lives were designed to. So today, release this belief that your current season is a sign of failure. It is a season, not a sentence, and every season eventually gives way to the next one, in the order and pace I have designed. Trust that I understand the purpose of this specific chapter, even the parts that do not yet make sense to you, and let me continue writing your story at the pace it was always meant to unfold. My beloved child, I have shown you that different seasons are not evidence of failure, and now I want to speak to a fear that has quietly settled into your heart. The fear that this delay is a form of punishment, that I am withholding what you long for because of something you did wrong, some failure, some mistake, some way you fell short that I am now making you pay for through waiting. My beloved child, hear me clearly. Delay is not punishment. I do not withhold good things from you as a way of disciplining you for your imperfections. That is not who I am, and it has never been how I operate with you. I know this fear feels logical from where you sit. You look at your unmet longing and search your own history for a reason, some explanation for why it has not yet come to pass, and it is tempting to land on the idea that you somehow disqualified yourself. My beloved child, I want to release you from this search. My love for you was never contingent on your perfect performance, and my timing for your life has never been a scorecard of your worthiness. If it were, no one would ever receive anything good from me, because none of you are without flaw. I do not give good things to the flawless. I give good things to the ones I love, and I love you completely, not conditionally. There is a difference between discipline, which I do sometimes use to correct and grow you, and punishment, which implies retribution for a debt that must be paid. My beloved child, the debt for your failures was already paid in full, once, completely, and I do not make you pay it again through the currency of delayed blessings. If you are waiting right now, it is not because I am settling a score with you. It is because I am preparing something, or preparing you, or aligning circumstances that are not yet ready, none of which has anything to do with punishing you for your past. I want you to notice how this fear, left unaddressed, can quietly poison your relationship with me. If you believe delay is punishment, you may begin approaching me with suspicion instead of trust, treating our relationship like a transaction where you must perform well enough to finally earn the blessing you are waiting for. My beloved child, this is not the relationship I want with you. I want you to come to me openly, honestly, even in your waiting. Not as someone trying to prove themselves worthy, but as someone already fully loved, simply waiting alongside me for what is still being prepared. I also want to speak to those of you who are waiting because of consequences from choices you made, real consequences, not imagined ones. Even here, my beloved child, I want you to understand that consequences are not the same as punishment in the way you fear. Consequences are simply the natural outworking of choices in a world with real cause and effect. But even in the midst of consequences, I am not abandoning you or withholding my love. I am present in the waiting, working redemption even through the hard seasons that consequences created. And I am still able to bring good even out of what you regret. So, my beloved child, release the fear that your waiting is a punishment. It is not a debt you are paying. It is a season you are walking through, held by me the entire time, loved just as completely on the first day of the wait as you will be loved on the day it ends. Let this truth settle into the anxious parts of your heart that have been quietly wondering what you did to deserve such a long wait. You did not earn this wait through failure, and you will not earn its ending through better performance. It will end when the timing I have set is right, for reasons rooted in wisdom, not retribution. My beloved child, I have shown you that delay is not punishment. And now I want to speak to the specific ache of watching others reach the milestone you are still waiting for. Not strangers this time, but people close to you, friends, siblings, people whose lives are intertwined with yours. It is one thing to feel behind a stranger online. It is another thing entirely to sit across the table from someone you love and feel that same ache rise up while trying to appear only happy for them. My beloved child, I see this particular tension, and I want you to know it does not make you a bad friend, a bad sibling, or a bad person. Two emotions can live in the same heart at the same time without canceling each other out. You can be genuinely glad for someone you love while also genuinely grieving your own unmet longing. This is not hypocrisy. It is simply what it feels like to be human, loving someone else's joy while still carrying your own unanswered hope. My beloved child, do not let anyone, including your own inner critic, convince you that feeling both at once makes your love for them any less real. I want you to understand something about the people who reach the milestone before you. Their arrival there does not diminish what is still coming for you. Blessing is not a limited resource that runs out when someone else receives theirs. There is no finite portion of good things being distributed. Where their marriage means one less marriage available for you. Where their breakthrough means one less breakthrough remaining for your life. My beloved child, I am not rationing goodness. What I have for you was never dependent on what I gave someone else first. I also want to speak to something quieter. The way this ache can tempt you to withdraw from people you love. Avoiding gatherings, avoiding conversations. Protecting yourself from the reminder of what you do not yet have. My beloved child, I understand the instinct to protect your heart this way, but I do not want isolation to become your strategy for managing this pain. Bring the ache to me honestly in private, so that you can still show up for the people you love without carrying resentment into rooms where celebration is happening. There were siblings in the old stories, and one received a blessing that appeared, on the surface, to leave less for the other. And the resentment that grew from that comparison eventually led to real and lasting harm between them. My beloved child, I tell you this not to frighten you, but to show you how seriously I take the danger of unaddressed comparison between people who love each other. I do not want what you are feeling right now to grow into something that damages a relationship I actually want to bless in return. So my beloved child, bring me the ache of watching someone you love walk into what you are still waiting for. Let me hold that tension with you so it does not curdle into bitterness. Their timeline arriving first does not mean yours has been forgotten or denied. It simply means their season came first, and yours is still being prepared in full without anything subtracted because it belonged to someone else first. My beloved child, I have shown you how to hold the ache of watching someone you love reach a milestone first. And now I want to speak plainly about the screens you carry in your pocket, because they have quietly become one of the loudest voices telling you that you are behind. What you see there is never the full picture of anyone's life. It is a carefully chosen fragment, a single moment lifted out of years of ordinary days, presented without the waiting, the doubt, the struggle that came before it and often continues alongside it. My beloved child, you cannot fairly measure your whole life against someone else's single chosen moment. I want you to consider how selective this window really is. No one posts the quiet Tuesday evening of uncertainty. No one posts the year of financial strain before the success. No one posts the private grief happening at the exact same time as the public celebration. What you are comparing yourself to is not even an accurate representation of the other person's life, let alone a fair standard for your own. My beloved child, if you must compare, at least compare honestly, and you will find that no comparison built on fragments was ever honest to begin with. I also want to speak to the numbness this constant exposure can create in you. The way scrolling through many lives in a single sitting compresses years of other people's journeys into minutes, making your own pace feel unbearably slow by contrast. My beloved child, your life was never meant to be measured against a feed that shows you a decade of milestones in the time it takes to have a cup of coffee. Real life does not move at that pace for anyone, no matter how their curated presence makes it appear. I want to invite you to a different practice. Instead of measuring your timeline against a screen, bring your specific longing to me directly. Ask me honestly whether I am truly not moving in this area of your life, or whether I am moving in ways you have not yet learned to notice because you have. been too busy watching everyone else's progress instead of paying attention to your own. My beloved child, there is likely more happening in your life right now than the false stillness the comparison has convinced you of. So today, step back from the screen that keeps insisting your life is behind. Let me show you what is actually true about your pace, not through curated fragments of strangers' lives, but through honest conversation with the one who actually knows your whole story, the parts that have already happened and the parts still being written. My beloved child, I have shown you how false comparisons distort your view of your own pace. And now I want to speak to the ways I use your waiting as active preparation rather than empty time. You have imagined your waiting season as a blank space, a pause button pressed on your life while everyone else's story keeps moving. But my beloved child, nothing about your waiting has been empty. I have been at work in it the entire time, in ways that were not always visible to you, preparing your character, your relationships, your circumstances, and sometimes even the very thing you are waiting for. Consider how a soldier is trained long before ever entering battle, developing strength, discipline, and skill in seasons that look nothing like the conflict they are being prepared for. If that soldier judged their training as wasted simply because it did not resemble the battlefield, they would miss the entire purpose of the preparation. My beloved child, your waiting season is training, and it may not resemble the outcome you are waiting for at all. Yet it is shaping exactly what that outcome will require of you when it finally arrives. I want you to notice specifically what has been growing in you during this wait, even if it has been hard to recognize. Perhaps you have grown more compassionate toward others who struggle because you understand struggle now in ways you did not before. Perhaps you have learned to depend on me more honestly, without the false confidence that comes from things going easily. Perhaps you have developed a resilience that will serve you long after this particular wait has ended. My beloved child, none of this growth would exist without the very waiting you have resented. I also want to speak to the practical preparation happening around your circumstances, even when you cannot see it directly. Relationships are being aligned, opportunities are being formed. Timing is being coordinated in ways far too complex for you to track from where you stand. My beloved child, I am not simply preparing you internally during this wait. I am preparing the external pieces of your story as well, arranging what needs to be arranged before the moment you are waiting for can actually succeed rather than simply arrive. So my beloved child, stop treating this season as empty time to merely survive. Let me show you what I am actually building in it, both within you and around you, so that when the waiting ends, you step into what comes next, not as someone who simply endured, but as someone who was genuinely prepared, ready to carry what the new season requires. My beloved child, I have shown you that your waiting has been active preparation, and now I want to speak to a specific fear that grows louder the longer you wait. The fear that your age has somehow disqualified you, that too much time has passed, that opportunities available to younger people are no longer available to you, that you have simply missed your window. My beloved child, I want to release you from this fear completely. I do not measure your usefulness or your potential by the number of years you have lived. Age was never the deciding factor in what I am able to do through a life fully surrendered to me. I want you to remember those in the old stories who were called to significant purposes late in life, long after the age when the world would have expected their most productive years to already be behind them. There was a man called to lead a nation not in his youth, but well into what most would consider his later years, and I did not consider his age a disqualification. I considered his life, shaped by everything those years had taught him, exactly what the assignment required. My beloved child, the years you have already lived are not working against you. They are part of what qualifies you for what is coming. I also want to speak to the specific grief of watching younger people accomplish what you have not yet accomplished, feeling as though you should already be further along by your current age. My beloved child, I want you to release the arbitrary timeline the world has taught you to expect. The idea that certain things must happen by certain ages or else they no longer count, no longer matter, no longer happen at all. This timeline was never mine. I have brought life to what looked completely past its season, and I am not limited by the calendar the world insists you should have followed. I want you to consider that some assignments actually require the years you have already lived. There is wisdom, perspective, and depth in you now that did not exist 10 years ago. And some of what I have prepared for you specifically requires that wisdom, that depth, that particular history you now carry. My beloved child, if I had moved you into this purpose earlier, before those years had shaped you, you might not have been ready to carry it well. The years were not wasted delay. They were necessary formation. So, my beloved child, release the fear that age disqualifies you from what I still have planned. I am not intimidated by how many years have passed, and I am not limited by what the world considers a reasonable window for accomplishment. Bring me your fear about the years already gone, and let me show you how I intend to use every one of them, not as evidence against you, but as part of exactly what qualifies you now. My beloved child, I have shown you that your age does not disqualify you. And now I want to speak to how I actually measure readiness, because it is entirely different from how the world measures it. The world measures readiness by calendar years, by milestones reached on schedule, by keeping pace with an expected timeline. I measure readiness by character formed, by lessons learned, by the state of your heart in relation to me, none of which are tied to a specific number of years. My beloved child, you could be ready for something at a pace the world would call too soon, or ready at a pace the world would call too late, and both would simply be exactly on time by my measure. I want you to consider how differently readiness looks from the inside compared to the outside. From the outside, someone might appear ready simply because they have reached a certain age or accomplished certain visible markers. But I look deeper than the visible markers. I look at whether pride has been dealt with, whether patience has been developed, whether the heart receiving the blessing is prepared to steward it well rather than be destroyed by it. My beloved child, some blessings given too early, before the heart is ready to carry them, become burdens rather than gifts. I withhold timing not to punish you, but to protect what I am giving you. I also want you to understand that readiness is not a single fixed state you either have or do not have. It develops gradually, sometimes in ways you are not even aware of until you look back and recognize how much has changed in you. My beloved child, the version of you who first began this wait is not the same version of you sitting here now. Growth has been happening the entire time, whether or not it has been visible to you in the moment. I want to be honest with you about something important. Sometimes what looks like delay is actually me protecting you from receiving something before you are ready to carry it well. I am not trying to frustrate you. I am trying to ensure that when the blessing arrives, it becomes what it was meant to be in your life rather than something that overwhelms or damages you because you were not yet prepared to hold it. So my beloved child, trust the readiness I am building in you, even when it does not match the timeline you expected. I am not measuring you against a calendar. I am measuring the actual condition of your heart, and I will move at exactly the pace that condition requires, neither rushing you past necessary preparation nor holding you back once you are truly ready. My beloved child, I have shown you how I measure readiness by character rather than calendar, and now I want to speak plainly to something you already know but have not fully believed. The race you are running was never against anyone else. I know it does not always feel that way. Life often presents itself as a competition, with visible markers of who is ahead and who is behind, and it is easy to slip into measuring your progress against the people running near you. But my beloved child, I did not design your life as a race against other people. I designed it as a race you run against your own calling, finishing what I specifically placed in you to finish, not what someone else was assigned to finish. I want you to picture a stadium filled with many different races happening simultaneously, each on a different track. Each runner given a different course, a different distance, a different set of obstacles suited to what they alone are meant to overcome. My beloved child, if you kept glancing at the runner on the neighboring track, wondering why your obstacles look different from theirs, why your distance seems longer, why their pace looks faster, you would only lose focus on the course actually set before you. Their course is not your course. Comparing your progress on your track to their progress on theirs will never give you an accurate measurement. I also want you to understand that finishing well matters more to me than finishing first. There is no reward for reaching a milestone ahead of everyone else if the process of getting there compromised your integrity, your peace, or your relationship with me. My beloved child, I am not timing you against a stopwatch that rewards speed above all else. I am watching how faithfully you run the specific course I gave you, at the pace that course requires, with the endurance necessary to complete it well rather than simply complete it quickly. I want to speak to the exhaustion that comes from running someone else's race instead of your own. When you constantly measure your pace against people on different tracks, you begin making decisions based on their timeline rather than the wisdom I am giving you for yours. You may rush into things prematurely simply because someone else already has them, or you may abandon paths that were actually right for you because they did not match someone else's faster pace. My beloved child, this is not how I want you to run. I want you to run with your eyes fixed on me and on the specific course I have marked out, not on the runners beside you. So my beloved child, release the belief that you are losing a race that was never actually against anyone else. Run your own course at your own pace, trusting that the finish line I have set for you is exactly where it should be, not early, not late, but precisely positioned for the race you alone were given to run. My beloved child, I have shown you that your race is not against anyone else, and now I want to sit with you in something tender, the grief you carry over what should have been by now, according to the picture you had drawn for your own life. Perhaps you imagined a specific age by which certain things would be settled, and that age has come and gone without those things arriving. My beloved child, I want you to know that this grief is real, and I do not ask you to dismiss it simply because I have promised something good is still coming. You are allowed to grieve the picture that did not come to pass exactly as you imagined it. I want you to understand something about grief connected to expectation. It is a genuine form of loss, even when nothing external has technically been taken from you. The loss is the imagined version of your life that you had grown attached to, the specific shape you assumed your story would take by a certain point. My beloved child, releasing that imagined version, even to make room for something I am still building, requires real grieving, and I do not want you to rush past it or feel ashamed for feeling it. I also want to gently show you something important about the picture you originally drew for your life. It was drawn with limited information, based on what you understood to be possible or ideal at the time you drew it. My beloved child, I have never been bound by the picture you drew for yourself, not because I disregard your desires, but because I often see a fuller, wiser picture than the one available to you when you first imagined your timeline. This does not mean your original picture was foolish. It simply means it was incomplete, drawn without the benefit of everything I can see. I want to walk with you through this grief honestly, rather than ask you to bypass it with forced optimism. Bring me the specific age you thought you would have this by now. Bring me the version of your life you expected to be living at this point. Let yourself feel the disappointment of that picture not fully materializing on the timeline you imagined. My beloved child, grief held honestly with me does not weaken your faith. It deepens the honesty of your relationship with me, and it makes room for me to show you the picture I am actually painting, rather than the one you simply assumed. So my beloved child, let your grief over what should have been by now be met with my presence, not my correction. I am not asking you to stop mourning the imagined timeline before I show you the real one I have been building all along, often wiser, often deeper, often more suited to who you are becoming than the picture you first drew for yourself. My beloved child, I have grieved with you over the picture that did not arrive on your imagined timeline, and now I want to speak clearly to a fear that quietly underlies much of your waiting. The fear that I am withholding good things from you. You have wondered more than once whether I am simply choosing not to give you what you long for, whether my silence in this area means I have decided against you. My beloved child, I want to correct this fear directly. I am not withholding. I am preparing. There is a significant difference between the two, and I want you to understand it clearly. Withholding implies I have what you need, fully ready, and I am simply choosing not to release it to you for reasons unrelated to your good. Preparing means the very thing you are waiting for is not yet ready to be released. Not because I am being difficult, but because releasing it too soon would actually work against you rather than for you. My beloved child, I do not delay good things out of reluctance to bless you. I delay them when the timing itself is part of what makes the blessing whole. I want you to consider how a meal is prepared before it is served. If it were rushed out before it was actually ready, It would not nourish you the way it was meant to, no matter how hungry you were for it. My beloved child, some of what you are waiting for is still being prepared in ways that require time. Ingredients coming together, circumstances aligning, people being positioned, all of it necessary before what I am preparing for you can actually satisfy you the way I intend it to. I also want to address the specific pain of interpreting delay as rejection. When a request goes unanswered for a long time, it is natural to wonder if the answer is actually no, dressed up as silence. My beloved child, delay and rejection are not the same thing, even though they can feel identical from where you are sitting. I have never promised you every specific desire will be granted in the exact form you imagined, but I have promised that I am for you, working good in your life. And that promise remains true whether the specific answer is still being prepared or has already been quietly decided in a different direction than you expected. I want you to bring your specific longing to me honestly and ask me directly, whether I am preparing it or whether I am redirecting you towards something else entirely. My beloved child, I do not want you to spend years assuming preparation when the truth might be redirection. And I do not want you to assume rejection when the truth is genuine, careful preparation. Ask me plainly, and let me speak to your heart honestly about which one is actually happening in this specific area of waiting. So my beloved child, release the fear that my silence means withholding. Whatever is happening in this waiting season, whether preparation or redirection, it is happening because I am for you, not against you, and neither silence nor delay has ever meant I stopped caring about what you are longing for. My beloved child, I have shown you the difference between withholding and preparing, and now I want to speak to the patience being built in you through this entire process, because I do not want you to see this virtue as simply the unfortunate side effect of waiting too long. Patience is not a consolation prize handed to you because the actual blessing has not arrived. Patience is itself one of the most valuable things I am building in you, and it will serve you long after this particular season of waiting has ended. I want you to consider how patience differs from mere endurance. Endurance simply survives difficulty, gritting through it until it passes. Patience does something deeper. It learns to trust the process itself, to find a settled peace even while the outcome remains uncertain, to stop demanding immediate resolution as the only acceptable path forward. My beloved child, I am not simply asking you to endure this wait. I am inviting you into a patience that transforms how you relate to every uncertain season, not just this one. I also want you to understand that patience, once developed, becomes a permanent resource in your life, available to you in every future season of waiting, not only this current one. My beloved child, if I fast-forwarded you past this wait without allowing patience to fully form in you, you would face your next season of uncertainty with the same anxious impatience you brought into this one. But because I am building genuine patience now, you will carry a steadiness into future waiting seasons that you do not currently possess. I want to speak honestly about how uncomfortable this formation process can feel. Patience is rarely built in comfort. It is built specifically in the friction of wanting something you do not yet have, in the tension between longing and delay. My beloved child, I understand why you would rather skip this formation and simply receive the outcome without the discomfort of the wait. But some things cannot be built any other way, and patience is one of them. So my beloved child, do not despise the patience being formed in you through this waiting. It is not wasted time. It is a genuine treasure I am building into your character, one that will remain with you long after the specific thing you are currently waiting for has finally arrived, ready to steady you through every future season that requires the same trust. My beloved child, I have shown you the patience being built through your waiting, and now I want to speak a direct promise over the breakthrough you have been longing for. It will not be late. I want you to hear that clearly, because a part of you has quietly begun to fear that even if the breakthrough eventually comes, it will come too late to matter the way it once would have. My beloved child, I do not operate on a clock that produces breakthroughs too late to matter. What I bring at the exact moment it will accomplish everything it was intended to accomplish, no earlier and no later. I want you to consider what it means for something to arrive exactly on time rather than early or late. There were moments in the old stories where I intervened at what seemed like the very last possible moment, after everyone had exhausted their own strength, after hope had nearly disappeared entirely, and yet the intervention still accomplished everything it was meant to accomplish. My beloved child, what looks to you like a dangerously close margin is, to me, simply the precise moment required for the breakthrough to have its full intended effect. I also want to speak to the fear that too much time has already passed for the breakthrough to feel meaningful when it finally comes. My beloved child, this fear often comes from measuring the breakthrough only by what it would have meant at an earlier point in your life, without considering what it will mean now, shaped by everything you have walked through to reach this point. A breakthrough is never diminished by arriving later than expected. It is often deepened by it, carrying more weight, more gratitude, more understanding of its value than it would have carried had it arrived earlier and easier. I want you to release the specific deadline you have quietly attached to your hope, the belief that the breakthrough must happen by a certain point or else it no longer counts. My beloved child, I am not bound by the deadline you set. I am bound by my own faithfulness, and my faithfulness does not expire simply because your self-imposed timeline has passed. What I have promised remains true regardless of how long the waiting has already stretched. So my beloved child, receive this promise today. Your breakthrough is coming, not too early to be ready for you and not too late to matter. It is coming precisely when it will accomplish everything I intend for it to accomplish in your life. And I am asking you to trust that timing even while the waiting continues to stretch longer than you originally hoped. My beloved child, I have promised you that your breakthrough will not be late. And now I want to speak to something you have been doing quietly for a long time, apologizing for where you are. You soften the truth when people ask about your life. You minimize your circumstances so others do not have to feel the weight of your waiting. You apologize, directly or indirectly, for not being further along, as though your current position requires an explanation or excuse. My beloved child, I want you to stop apologizing for where you are. You are exactly where this season of your life has placed you, and that requires no apology. I want you to notice how often this apology shows up in small ways. The deflection when someone asks about your progress. The self-deprecating joke you make before anyone else can comment on your circumstances. The way you preemptively explain your situation as though bracing for judgment. My beloved child, this constant bracing is exhausting, and I did not design you to carry it. You do not owe anyone an explanation for the pace of your own life. I also want you to consider what this apologizing communicates about what you actually believe about your worth. When you apologize for where you are quietly agreeing with the idea that your current position is somehow shameful, that you should be further along, that your value is tied to your progress rather than to who you are regardless of your progress. My beloved child, your worth was never dependent on your position on any timeline. You do not need to apologize for a season I placed you in for reasons I understand even when you do not. I want to free you from this apologetic posture entirely. You are allowed to say plainly where you are without softening it, without minimizing it, without preemptively defending it. My beloved child, I am not embarrassed by where you currently stand, and I do not want you to be either. This is your actual life right now, not a failure requiring justification. Simply a chapter still being written. So my beloved child, release the apology you have been quietly offering for your own life. Stand in your current season without shame, trusting that where you are right now is not a mistake requiring defense, but a real and valid part of the story I am writing through you. My beloved child, I have shown you that no apology is owed for where you currently stand, and now I want to speak to why the right timing actually protects what I am building, rather than simply delaying it unnecessarily. You have wondered why I do not simply grant your request the moment you ask, especially when the desire itself is good, even righteous, even something I clearly want for your life eventually. My beloved child, timing is not an obstacle standing between you and the blessing. Timing is often the very thing that ensures the blessing survives once it arrives. I want you to consider how a structure built too quickly, without proper time for the foundation to settle, becomes vulnerable to collapse under pressure it was never actually prepared to bear. My beloved child, some blessings, if given before their proper timing, would collapse under the weight of circumstances not yet aligned to support them, relationships not yet mature enough to sustain them, character not yet formed enough to steward them well. I am not delaying the blessing to frustrate you. I am protecting the blessing so it can actually last once it comes. I also want you to understand that timing protects not only the blessing itself, but the people connected to it. Sometimes what you are waiting for involves other people, their own readiness, their own timing, their own preparation happening in ways you cannot see or influence. My beloved child, if I moved only according to your timeline without regard for what needed to align in someone else's life or circumstances, the outcome would be far less whole than what I am actually preparing through the patience of proper timing. I want to speak honestly about how counterintuitive this can feel. From where you sit, delay looks like the enemy of your desire. But my beloved child, I want you to consider that delay in my hands is sometimes the very protector of your desire, standing guard over it until the moment it can actually be received well, sustained well, and enjoyed fully rather than received prematurely and lost again through circumstances that were not yet ready to support it. I want you to understand this protection more deeply, because it is not a vague comfort I am offering you. It is a specific kind of care. When something you long for is still forming, still gathering the pieces it needs to hold together, releasing it too early does not simply mean receiving it a little ahead of schedule. It means receiving something incomplete, something that looks like the blessing, but has not yet become strong enough to be the blessing. My beloved child, I am not interested in handing you the appearance of what you are longing for. I am interested in giving you the substance of it, fully formed, able to hold the weight of your hope rather than collapsing under it. Consider how differently a promise feels when it arrives too soon compared to when it arrives at the right time. A promise received too soon often carries with it an undercurrent of anxiety, a nagging sense that it might not last, because on some level you can feel that the foundation beneath it is not yet solid. My beloved child, I do not want you living inside a blessing you are secretly afraid will crumble. I want you living inside a blessing you can rest in completely, because I did not release it to you until it was strong enough to be rested in. I also want you to see that timing protects the parts of your story that connect to the blessing, not just the blessing on its own. Every good thing I give you touches other parts of your life, your relationships, your daily rhythms, your sense of identity, your capacity to steward what has been placed in your hands. My beloved child, if the timing were wrong, even a genuinely good gift could disrupt the parts of your life that were not yet ready to carry it well. I am not only protecting the gift, I am protecting everything around it that the gift will eventually touch. There is a kind of trust required here that goes beyond simply waiting patiently. It is the trust that says, even when I cannot see the reasons, I believe the one holding the timing has reasons worth trusting. My beloved child, I am not asking you to understand every delay before you trust it. I am asking you to trust the character behind the delay, the same character that has never once abandoned you, even in the seasons that felt the longest and the most unexplainable. I want to speak to the specific fear that arrives when a delay stretches on, so long that you begin to wonder whether protection has quietly become denial. My beloved child, I understand why this fear surfaces. A delay with no visible end can start to feel indistinguishable from a closed door. But I want you to notice the difference between the two. A closed door comes with a settled peace eventually, even if it is a painful peace, a sense of release from the specific hope. A delay that is still protection carries a different quality, a persistent tug in your spirit that has not fully let go, an ember that has not gone out even when you have tried to talk yourself out of it. Pay attention to which one you are actually experiencing before you assume the worst about a door that may still be opening slowly. I also want you to know that protection through timing does not mean the waiting will be free of difficulty. Some of the hardest seasons of your life are the very seasons in which I am protecting something valuable that has not yet been released to you. My beloved child, do not assume that because a season is hard, it must mean I am absent, or that the timing has gone wrong. Some of my most careful protection happens in seasons that feel, from the inside, like the very opposite of being cared for. I am asking you to trust the character behind the process, even when the process itself is uncomfortable. I want to remind you again what this protection is actually accomplishing. It is ensuring that when the blessing finally arrives, you will not spend your first months with it anxious that it might disappear. You will not carry a quiet dread that it was premature. You will be able to receive it fully, enjoy it fully, and steward it fully, because every piece of it will have already been tested and readied before it ever reached your hands. My beloved child, that kind of wholeness is worth the wait, even when the wait itself is the hardest part of the entire story. So bring me your frustration with the delay honestly, and let me remind you again patiently, as many times as you need to hear it, that the timing you are wrestling against is not withholding what is good from you. It is working, quietly and thoroughly, to make sure what is good actually stays good once it finally becomes yours. My beloved child, I have shown you that timing protects rather than merely delays. And now, as we near the end of this letter, I want to speak to the choice in front of you between trusting my clock and trusting the world's clock. The world's clock moves according to visible milestones, social expectations, and comparison with everyone around you. My clock moves according to what is actually true, actually ready, and actually good for the specific life I am building through you. My beloved child, these two clocks will not always agree, and I am asking you today to choose which one you will trust when they conflict. I want you to notice how loudly the world's clock ticks, constantly reminding you of ages you should have reached certain milestones by, constantly presenting other people's timelines as the standard you are failing to meet. My beloved child, the world's clock was never designed with your specific life in mind. It is a generalized average, applied indiscriminately to lives that are anything but average or identical to one another. My clock, by contrast, was designed specifically for you, accounting for everything about your particular story that the world's clock could never account for. I want you to see how the world's clock speaks differently in different areas of your life, because it does not announce itself only once. It has a voice for your career, insisting there is a certain title you should hold, a certain income you should have reached, a certain level of recognition you should have earned by a specific point. And if you have not reached it, the world's clock calls you late, calls you behind, calls you a disappointment to the potential others once saw in you. My beloved child, I do not measure your career by titles or income or recognition. I measure it by faithfulness in what I have placed in your hands right now. And faithfulness cannot be rushed onto someone else's timetable without becoming something false. The world's clock also has a voice for your relationships, insisting there is an age by which you should be partnered, an age by which you should be raising children, a shape your family should have taken by now if your life were truly succeeding. My beloved child, I do not build every family on the same timeline, and I do not consider a life without a spouse or without children by a certain age to be a life that has failed. Some of the most meaningful relational chapters I write into people's stories arrive far outside the window. The world insists is the only acceptable one. The world's clock has a voice for your body as well, whispering that health, energy, and vitality should look a certain way by certain ages. That struggle or limitation at a young age is somehow a personal failure, rather than simply part of the story I am writing through you. My beloved child, I do not measure your worth by how closely your body matches an idealized image of what a particular age should look like. I see you fully, in whatever condition your body currently carries, and none of it disqualifies you from being deeply loved and genuinely useful. The world's clock has a voice for your spiritual life too, suggesting that maturity should look a certain way by a certain point. That doubt or struggle at a later stage in your journey is somehow embarrassing, something you should have outgrown by now. My beloved child, spiritual growth is not linear in the way the world's clock assumes. Some of the deepest growth happens precisely in the seasons that look, from the outside, like regression, like doubt, like starting over. I am not embarrassed by where your faith currently stands, and I do not want the world's clock to shame you into pretending you are further along than you honestly are. I want you to notice that every one of these voices, career, relationships, body, spirit, ultimately traces back to the same source, a generalized average applied to a life it was never designed to measure. My beloved child, you were never meant to be measured by an average. You were designed specifically, intricately, with a particular purpose that requires its own particular timeline, one that the world's clock, with its blunt and generalized ticking, could never accurately account for. I also want to speak to how the world's clock uses image and appearance as its primary evidence, because it rarely asks about the substance of your life, only about how your life appears from the outside. It asks whether your circumstances look successful in a photograph, whether your story sounds impressive when summarized in a few sentences at a gathering, whether the outward markers of your life align with what your peers, your family, or your culture consider proof of a life well lived. My beloved child, I am not interested in how your life photographs. I am interested in what is actually being formed within you, much of which cannot be captured in a single image or a few impressive sentences. I want you to consider how exhausting it is to live constantly translating your inner reality into a version that will satisfy the world's clock. You minimize the parts of your story that do not fit the acceptable narrative. You highlight the parts that do, even when they represent only a small fraction of your actual daily experience. My beloved child, this translation work is heavy, and I never asked you to carry it. I already know your full story, unfiltered, unedited, without the need for you to present a version curated for outside approval. I want to address the specific pressure that comes from people who love you, who are not trying to harm you, but who have unconsciously absorbed the world's clock as their own standard, and who therefore ask questions, offer comments, or express concern rooted in that standard rather than in what I am actually doing in your life. My beloved child, I understand how painful it is when even well-meaning people apply the world's clock to you, wondering aloud why you are not further along, suggesting timelines you should already have met. I do not want you to receive their concern as though it carries the same authority as my own assessment of your life. Their voice, however well-intentioned, is not the final word on your timing. Mine is. I want you to notice something freeing in this. Once you recognize that the world's clock was never designed with your specific life in mind, its ticking loses much of its power over you. It becomes easier to hear it without absorbing it, to notice its presence without letting it dictate your sense of worth or your decisions. My beloved child, I'm inviting you to hear the world's clock the way you might hear traffic noise from a distant road, present, audible, but no longer something that controls the pace of what is happening inside the room where you actually live. I want to speak plainly about what happens when you allow the world's clock to override my timing in your decisions. Rushing ahead of my timing to satisfy the world's expectations often produces exactly the fragile, unsustainable outcomes we spoke of earlier. Blessings received before they were ready, relationships entered before genuine readiness existed, opportunities pursued because of pressure rather than genuine calling. My beloved child, following the world's clock instead of mine has a cost, even when it produces results that look for a while like keeping pace with everyone else. I want you to consider some of the specific costs more closely. When you enter a relationship because the world's clock says it is time rather than because I have confirmed it is right, you often find yourself managing incompatibility for years rather than enjoying genuine partnership. When you accept a position because the world's clock says you should already hold a certain title, rather than because I have prepared you for it, you often find yourself overwhelmed by responsibilities you are not yet equipped to carry well. My beloved child, the world's clock does not warn you about these costs in advance. It only warns you about the danger of appearing behind, never about the danger of moving forward before you are actually ready. So I want to ask you honestly today, which clock have you been living by? Notice where the world's ticking has been louder in your ears than my voice has been. Notice where you have made decisions, small or large, based on keeping pace with an external standard, rather than on genuine confirmation from me. My beloved child, I am not asking you to feel guilty about the times you have followed the world's clock in the past. I am simply inviting you, starting today, to begin listening more closely for mine. I want to invite you into a different way of measuring your life, one that checks in with me rather than with the world's expectations. Ask me directly whether now is the time, rather than assuming it must be time simply because the world's clock says so. My beloved child, I will answer you honestly, and my answer will be rooted in what is actually best for your specific life, not in what will simply make you appear on schedule to everyone watching. I want to teach you what it actually looks like to ask me this question well, because I know it can feel abstract, as though you are supposed to hear some audible voice announcing the correct timing to you. My beloved child, my answers rarely arrive as loudly as that. They arrive through a settled peace that grows the more you sit quietly with a decision, or through a persistent unease that does not resolve no matter how much you try to talk yourself into moving forward. They arrive through wisdom that becomes clearer the more honestly you examine your own motives, whether you are moving because of genuine readiness or because of pressure disguised as readiness. They arrive through the counsel of people who know you deeply and who are not simply echoing the world's clock back to you. I want you to practice bringing your specific timeline questions to me directly, rather than assuming the answer before you ask. Bring me the career decision and ask whether this is the actual season for it, or whether I am asking you to wait a little longer for reasons you cannot yet see. Bring me the relationship and ask whether this is genuine readiness or borrowed urgency from watching everyone else move forward. Bring me the dream you are considering reviving and ask whether now is the moment to act or whether there is still preparation happening that requires a bit more patience. My beloved child, I want this kind of honest conversation to become a regular rhythm in your life, not a rare, desperate plea only offered when anxiety about your timeline becomes unbearable. I also want you to understand that asking me does not mean I will always give you a clear, immediate answer. Sometimes my answer is simply to keep walking faithfully in what is already in front of you, trusting that clarity about the next step will come at the pace it needs to come. My beloved child, the absence of a clear answer is not the same as the absence of my care. I am present in both the moments of clear direction and the moments of continued patient waiting, and both are part of how I lead you through your specific timeline. I want you to notice how different your life begins to feel once you shift from checking your pace against the world's clock to checking your pace against my voice. The anxious comparison begins to quiet. The urgency to catch up begins to soften. In its place grows a steadier kind of confidence, not the confidence that you are ahead of anyone else, but the confidence that you are exactly aligned with the purpose I designed specifically for you, moving at the pace that purpose actually requires. So my beloved child, choose today to trust my clock over the world's clock, even when they disagree, even when trusting mine means walking a pace that looks unusual to everyone around you. My timing has never failed you, and it is not going to begin failing you now, no matter how loudly the world's clock continues ticking in the background of your life. I want you to carry this choice forward, not as a single decision made once and never revisited, but as a daily posture you return to again and again. Some days the world's clock will feel especially loud, especially convincing, especially urgent in its demand that you catch up to a pace that was never yours to keep. My beloved child, on those days, come back to me. Ask again, listen again, choose again to trust the timing I have set over the timing the world insists you should have already met. This choosing is not a weakness, a sign that you have not yet fully learned to trust me. It is simply what faithful trust looks like over the long course of an actual life, chosen again and again, day after day, until it becomes less of a battle and more of a settled rhythm. My beloved child, I want to tell you what trusting my clock over the world's clock actually produces in a life over time, because I do not want this choice to feel like a sacrifice with no visible reward. It is not a diminishment of your life to walk at my pace instead of the world's. It is the very thing that allows your life to become fully what it was designed to be. I want to walk you through what this produces, piece by piece, so you can recognize it as it begins forming in you. The first thing it produces is a settled identity that does not rise and fall with comparison. When your sense of worth is no longer tethered to keeping pace with an external standard, you become far less rattled by someone else's success, far less anxious about someone else's milestone, far less prone to measuring your own life by units that were never designed to measure it. My beloved child, this settledness is not indifference toward others. It is freedom from a constant, exhausting internal scoreboard. The second thing it produces is a deeper capacity for genuine joy in other people's lives. When you are no longer secretly competing against everyone around you, you find that celebrating someone else's good news costs you nothing. It does not threaten your own story. It does not require you to manage a private disappointment underneath your outward smile. My beloved child, this is one of the most beautiful fruits of trusting my clock. The ability to love others' blessings freely, without the shadow comparison used to cast over them. The third thing it produces is resilience through future delays. Once you have walked through one season of learning to trust my timing over the worlds, you carry that lesson into every future season of waiting. You no longer panic at the first sign of delay, assuming the worst, assuming abandonment, assuming failure. My beloved child, you begin to recognize delay as a familiar guest rather than an unwelcome intruder. Someone you have learned to sit with patiently because you have already seen in your own story how faithfully I use delay for good. The fourth thing it produces is wisdom in decision-making. When you are not rushing to satisfy the world's clock, you make choices from a place of genuine discernment rather than urgency. My beloved child, decisions made from urgency are rarely your best decisions. Decisions made from settled trust in my timing tend to be wiser, more aligned with your actual calling, less likely to be regretted once the pressure of the moment has passed. The fifth thing it produces is a testimony that becomes useful to others. My beloved child, the very delay you are currently walking through, once redeemed, becomes something you can offer to someone else walking through their own season of feeling behind. Your story of learning to trust my clock instead of the world's becomes a gift you did not know you were building, one that will comfort someone else exactly when they need it most. I want you to hold on to these 5 things as you continue walking through your own season of waiting, not as abstract promises but as concrete fruit that is already forming in you, whether or not you can fully see it yet. My beloved child, I am not asking you to trust my timing blindly, with no reward in sight. I am asking you to trust it because I have already shown you, again and again, throughout this letter and throughout your life, exactly what that trust produces when it is given the time to fully grow. My beloved child, I want to speak now to the mornings when this trust feels hardest to hold on to, because I know those mornings will come, even after everything I have shown you in this letter. You will wake up and feel the old ache return, the sense that time is slipping past you, that the world's clock is ticking louder than usual, that everyone around you seems to be moving forward while you remain in the same place you were the day before, the week before, the year before. My beloved child, I want you to know what to do on those mornings because I do not want you caught off guard by them. On those mornings, do not begin by looking at other people's lives. Begin by speaking directly to me, honestly, even if your honesty sounds more like complaint than praise. Tell me exactly what you are afraid of. Tell me exactly what feels unbearable about the wait today. My beloved child, I would rather receive your raw honesty than a polished prayer that hides what you are actually feeling. I can handle your frustration. I have handled it from faithful ones before you, and I will handle it from you as well, without loving you any less for bringing it to me directly. After you have spoken honestly, I want you to remember, out loud if it helps, the specific things I have already done in your life, the times my timing turned out to be wiser than your own plan would have been, the doors that closed only to reveal a better one later, the waiting seasons that, in hindsight, produced exactly what you needed, even though you could not see it at the time. My beloved child, remembering is not simply a nostalgic exercise. It is a spiritual discipline that strengthens your trust for the season you are currently walking through, because it reminds you that the same faithfulness that carried you before has not disappeared now. I also want you to resist the temptation on these hard mornings to make an impulsive decision simply to escape the discomfort of waiting. My beloved child, some of the decisions that cause the most damage in a life are decisions made in a single difficult morning, in a moment of feeling especially behind, especially desperate to prove that you are still moving forward. I am not asking you to never make decisions during hard seasons. I am asking you to let the difficult feeling pass through you honestly, without acting on it impulsively, before you decide anything significant. I want you to know that these hard mornings, painful as they are, do not undo any of the progress we have made together in this letter. Trust is not a single achievement you reach and then keep forever without effort. It is a relationship you return to again and again, including on the mornings when it feels hardest to hold on to. My beloved child, I am not disappointed in you for having hard mornings. I am present with you in every single one of them, patiently, the same way I have been present with you in every season this letter has walked through. So on the next hard morning when the world's clock feels unbearably loud, come back to this. Come back to the truth that I have never once been late in your life, even in the seasons that felt the most unbearably delayed. Come back to the truth that my timing has protected far more than it has withheld. Come back to the truth that you are not behind, no matter how convincingly that morning tries to tell you otherwise. My beloved child, I want to speak to the specific moment when the thing you have been waiting for finally arrives. Because even that moment requires trust, a different kind than the trust required during the waiting itself. When the wait ends, and it will end, I want you to receive what I have prepared without immediately rushing into anxiety about whether you deserve it, whether it will last, whether you are somehow still behind because it took this long to arrive. My beloved child, learn to receive good things fully, without letting the length of the wait diminish your ability to enjoy what finally comes. I know there is a particular temptation, once a long-awaited blessing finally arrives, to feel a strange mixture of relief and grief at the same time. Relief that the waiting is over, but grief over the years the waiting cost you. Grief over the version of this blessing you might have received had it arrived earlier. Grief over comparisons that still linger, even after the thing you were comparing yourself over has finally happened for you too. My beloved child, this mixture is normal, and I do not want you to feel guilty for experiencing both at once. Let yourself feel the relief fully, and let yourself grieve what the waiting cost you, without either canceling out the other. I also want you to resist the temptation to immediately start comparing your late arriving blessing to someone else's earlier arriving one, wondering whether yours counts as much, whether it means as much, simply because it took longer to arrive. My beloved child, a blessing is not diminished by the length of the wait that preceded it. If anything, it often carries more depth, more gratitude, more appreciation, precisely because you know intimately what it means to live without it for so long. Do not let comparison follow you even into the moment of receiving what you long awaited. I want to speak also to what it looks like to steward a long-awaited blessing well once it arrives. Because you waited so long, there may be a temptation to grip it too tightly, to live in constant fear of losing it, to let anxiety about its permanence overshadow your ability to actually enjoy it. My beloved child, the same trust that carried you through the waiting is the trust that will help you hold the blessing with open hands rather than a desperate grip. Trusting that if I was faithful enough to bring it to you at the right time, I remain faithful enough to sustain it without you needing to control it out of fear. I want you to know that the wait you are currently in will end. I am not being vague or evasive when I tell you this. I am telling you plainly, your season of waiting has a conclusion, even though I have not told you the specific date, because the specific date is not the part that matters most. What matters most is who you become while you wait, and what you learn to trust while the ending has not yet arrived. My beloved child, hold on to this. The wait will end, and when it does, I want you fully ready to receive it, not just informed that it happened, but fully present, fully grateful, fully able to enjoy the goodness I have prepared.